You talk about welfare reform, a lot of the times that you see from the Republican Party, I agree, there have to be cuts, but I don't think there should be guts. I think there's a lot of people that are on welfare for the right reasons. You know, there's people that need help. They need a boost. They need to get back on their feet, and welfare can provide that. Now, one of the reforms that a lot of Republicans have gone to is to have a mandatory drug test for a lot of welfare recipients. And it sounds like a good idea when you look at it. And I don't know if it's a moral stand or if it's a fiscal reform. But if it's a fiscal reform, I hate to inform y'all that it's not going to save the taxpayers any money. It's going to do the exact opposite. First, when you look at it, it seems like a no-brainer. Pay for a $50 drug test and save $2,500 in welfare that you're not giving out to the recipient anymore. At the end of the day, after you charge for the tests that you have to run on the people, say you catch 10% of them. The federal government at first would gain $10.8 billion. But then 430,000 people would be put, what happens after you fail a drug test? You go to prison. And it just so happens that keeping a prisoner costs $4,000 more to the taxpayer a year than keeping a welfare recipient. So in the end, we're going to lose $3.9 billion if we do that. And say 10% of these people have kids. With foster care going $400 a month per child, that's going to be an extra $206 million. And you're looking at $4.1 billion in new spending. And for what? You know, you're either going to break families up, or you're going to pack these welfare recipients that were on drugs into prisons that are already at 200% capacity in the state of Alabama. Also, I feel that we have to work together to find this. Next, I was going to say about the moral standpoint of it. If it's a moral standpoint against cheating, I think that's great. But unfortunately, you find that Republicans in Washington have not pledged to do everything they can to work with Democrats to get people back to work, have not pledged to make sure that people play by the same rules. They have, however, pledged to say that they'll do no government spending, no new taxes, and that's exactly what this is. A bill is just a good idea without votes, and unfortunately, a Republican that would vote for $4.1 billion in new spending is about as rare as a $9 bill.
I do believe in urinalyses, which are the urine drug tests. They cost $44, and if you gut and cut these welfare programs, then you will have more money to spend elsewhere, and that then the taxpayers that are paying however much, whatever figure it is, then they will be assured that their tax money is going where it's necessary, and that we will, in a sense, weed out the people that are abusing the welfare program. In many of these programs, there are lots of abusers, and we recognize that, and the Democrats recognize that as well. But the drug tests, they are a necessity. Just to, I mean, if you're not willing to change, then why would taxpayers be willing to pay for something that you abuse? And I believe that if the Republicans, just one thing that my opponent said, if the Republicans are not willing to compromise, then why have a lot of Republicans' principles been abused and been transformed into these democratic things? Because, okay, a lot of the Republican principles have been altered into fitting these democratic principles, which they've lost all sort of morals and ethical decisions.
First off, morals and ethical decisions. You see a lot of the time with Republicans that they use their faith to guide their views politically, whether it be on abortion, gay marriage, or buying lottery tickets for Alabama students. But it seems that it changes a little bit in welfare. I think that we need to be able to keep those principles that we have here in the Bible Belt, take care of the least of our brethren, do what Romans 15:3 tells us to do, and do what's necessary, do what our government asks us to do for the progression of its people. I also think you have to look at what's welfare meant to be. A lot of the time, people have played it out to be just a whole bunch of free rides. Nobody wants to do anything but just live off the government and the taxpayers, their hard-working money. Well, I'll tell you, most of the people on welfare don't do that. And most of the people, only a small percentage of the people are even on it after 3 years. Most people go off, they get welfare to get back on their feet, they need that boost. And they do what a student here, Krista James, her mom, she was on welfare when she had her. And now what did she do today with that free ride? She's the CEO of Cummings Aerospace, a multi-million-dollar company, and she is a job creator today. Welfare can do amazing things. It can get people back on their feet. It's not the time to talk guts. It's time to talk cuts. Let's talk cuts.
And yes, I agree. That's really what welfare is meant to do. It's meant to get people back on their feet. But in Mississippi, the welfare rate is 20.8% of all of their people are on welfare. And the lowest is 6.3% in their entire state. So it is obvious that there are more people than we expect that are on these welfare programs. I volunteer weekly at a local youth club, and I know that those kids are on welfare programs, food stamps. And the director, he says every week, not every week, but he says regularly, do you want to be on these food stamps for the rest of your life? Do you want to be hindered like this? No, you do not. He wants to motivate them to be the best they can be, contribute to society as much as they can without being on these programs.
If you want to talk about free rides, the South, especially Alabama, loves free lunches and free rides. We pay the least in taxes, and yet we get the most in government assistance. And I think that there's times where you have to recognize that we, the people, it's not me, the people, where maybe someone in Michigan or Minnesota has to pay for somebody in Alabama to pull the country together so that we can be united and not divided. If you want to look at the New Deal, a lot of people would call that socialism and government intervention today. But if it wasn't for the New Deal, you wouldn't have TVA. Without TVA, we'd be enjoying this debate in candlelight.
I think it's an obvious direction of taking this country. We need to first lower taxes for Americans to help out small businesses and to put more money into a struggling economy. Second, we need to invest into our teachers, into our education system. This will allow more people to be trained and ready to take on the jobs that are out there. Third, we need to drill on public lands. Don't overregulate the coal industry and use that 49% of the American energy that we already have. Do not invest in companies like Solyndra. Fourth, we need to restructure welfare. Make them work, have jobs, do community service, get people back on their feet, and not let them live off the government for the rest of their life. Thank you.
All right. November the 6th, 2012, I believe will be a great day. It'll be the day that we reaffirm what direction we want to go into this country. We're going to say that we are better off 4 years ago than we are today. And to say that Barack Obama is our guy and he will bring us to growth in the next great chapter of the American story. We're going to do that with a progressive tax code, making sure everybody plays by the same rules, by lowering middle class taxes while asking the 2% to pay a little bit more for 5 to 10 years. It's worked before, it will work again. Second, all the above energy plan. Not just alternative energy, but oil. Barack Obama believes that. We've done a lot more drilling in oil. And due to his leadership, we're going to be the top oil producer by 2020. I believe that we need to all come together, no matter what happens. Whether Romney wins, whether Obama wins, we need to come together. Because polarization will be our greatest poison if we let it happen. Can never be party before country. So I thank you very much for coming out to the debate. I got Barack's back like a chiropractor, and I hope y'all will too on November the 6th, 2012.
I would just like to thank Mr. Wallace for letting this happen.
Yeah.
Mr. Wallace has gotten a lot of heat over the past few months between Patrick and myself. But I just want to thank you all for coming out and remembering what we're here for. And
Very good.